Welcome. Hi there. I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome to our next session of reading Thucydides Peloponnesian War. When we last week left off, we read between chapter 20 up to chapter from 25 through 31 of book 2, which kind of finished up the first a summer of the first year of the war. Now, today we're going to now look at this the winter of the first year, um, and we'll go along like this. It will start at chapter 32. In the ensuing winter of our winter, the Arcadian ever Arcus, wishing to return to Asticus, persuaded the Corinthians to sail over with 40 ships and 1,500 hoplites and restore him. Himself also hiring mercenaries. In command of a force was Euthydarian, son of Oristotemos, Timonizenkos, son of Timocrates, and Eumachus, son of Christus, who sailed over and restored him. And after failing in an attempt on some other places on the Achaean coast, which they were desirous of gaining, they began their voyage home. Coasting along the shore, they touched the uh, Cephallarian and made a descent on Cranian territory. And losing some men in a surprise attack by the Cranians, they put to sea somewhat hurriedly and returned home. Now, 34, chapter 34. At the same time, the Athenians gave a funeral at a public cost to those who had first fallen in the war. It was custom of their ancestors, and the manner of it was followed. 3 days before the ceremony, the bones of the dead were laid out in tents in which had been erected, their friends bringing to their relatives such offerings as they pleased. And the funeral procession, cypress coffins, are borne in carts, one for each tribe, and the bones of the deceased being placed in the coffin of their tribe. Among these is carried one empty bearer, decked for the missing, that is, for those whose bodies could not be recovered. Any citizen or stranger who pleases joins in the procession, and the female relatives are there to wail at the burial. The dead are laid in a public sepulchre in the most beautiful suburb of the city, in which those who fall in the war are always buried, with the exception of those slain at Marathon, for which their singular and extraordinary burial was interred on the spot where they fell. Such the bodies have been laid in earth. A man chosen by the city of approved wisdom and eminent reputation pronounces over them an appropriate eulogy, after which all retire. Such a manner of burying throughout the whole of the war. Whoever the occasion had, the established custom was observed. Meanwhile, there was the first that had fallen. This Pericles, son of Xanthippus, was chosen to pronounce their eulogy. When the proper time arrived, he advanced from the sepulchre to an elevated platform in order to be heard by as many as the crowd it was possible. And he spoke as follows. Now, this is Pericles' funeral oration. Okay, and now chapter 25, we start get the oration. Most of my predecessors in this place have commended him who had made this speech part of the law, telling us that it is well that it should be delivered at the burial of those who fall in battle. For myself, I would have thought that the worth which had been displayed itself in deeds should be sufficiently rewarded by honors, also be shown by deeds, such as you see in this funeral prepared at the people's cost. And I could have wished that the reputation of many brave men were not to be imperiled in the mouth of a single individual, to stand or fall according as he spoke well or ill. In other words, he's saying, in other words, he doesn't want them, the reputation of the soldiers should not depend upon the speaker, who does the thing, right, but by their deeds and their actions. For it is hard to speak properly upon a subject where it is even difficult to conceive your hearers, to convince, conceive, difficult to convince your hearers that you are speaking the truth. On the one hand, the friend who is familiar with every fact of the story may think that some points he had not uh, has not been set forth with that fullness which he wished, and knows it to be it deserve. In other words, some people who know familiar say, "Well, he didn't cover that." On the other hand, he who is a stranger to the matter may be led by envy to suspect exaggerations if he hears anything above his own nature. For men can endure to hear others praise only as long as they can severely persuade themselves of their own ability to equal the actions recounted. When this point is passed, envy comes in, and with it, incredulity. In other words, you can only stand. He's saying that for most people, if they hear people being praised and they see that beyond capacity beyond then what happens? Well, envy comes in, and then disbelief, right? Incredulity. However, since our ancestors have stamped this custom with their approval, it becomes my duty to obey the law and to try to satisfy your several wishes and the opinions as best as I may. Now 36, chapter 36. I shall begin with our ancestors. It is both just and proper that they should have honor of the first mention on an account like the present. They dwelt in this country without break in the succession from generation to generation, and handed it down free to the present time of their valor. And if one remote ancestor deserved praise, much more to um, sorry, ancestors deserve praise, much more do our own fathers, who added to their inheritance the empire which we now possess, and spared no pains to be able to leave their acquisitions to us of the present generation. Lastly, there are few parts of our dominions that have not been augmented by those of us here, who are still more or less in the vigor of life, while the mother country has been furnished by us with everything that we can endure to spend on her own resources, whether for war or for peace. That part of our history which tells of the military achievement which gave us our several possessions, or of the ready valor with which either we or our fathers stemmed the tide of Hellenic or foreign aggression, is a theme too familiar to my hearers for me to dwell upon, and I shall therefore pass by it. But what was the road by which we reached our position? What the former government under which our greatness grew? That what the nation's habits out of which it sprang? These are the questions which, and actually, the government here also is regime, the politeia, what form of government, the politeia, under which our greatness grew, that which our national our the habits of our place people, out of which sprang. These are the questions which I may try to solve before I proceed an eulogy upon these men, since I think this to be the subject upon which the present occasion a speaker may properly dwell, and to which the whole assembly, whether citizens or foreigners, may listen with advantage. Our constitution is here. This is our politeia, our regime. Does not copy the laws of neighboring states. We are rather a pattern to others than imitators ourselves. In administration favors the many instead of the few. This is why it's called a democracy. If we look to the laws, they afford equal justice, isonomia. Okay, equal justice, equal to all in their private differences. If to social standing, advance in public life falls to reputation for capacity, class considerations not being allowed to interfere with merit, nor again does poverty bar the way. If a man is able to serve the city, he is not hindered by the obscurity of his conditions. The freedom the liberty of freedom, which we enjoy our regime, our politeia, extends also to our ordinary life. Thus far from exceeding a jealous surveillance over others, we do not feel called upon to be angry with our neighbor for doing what he likes, or to even to indulge in those injurious looks which cannot fail to be offensive although they inflict no real harm. But all this ease in our private relations does not make us lawless as citizens. Against this fear is our chief safeguard, teaching us to obey the magistrates and the laws, particularly such in regards the protection of the injured, um, whether they are actually on the statute book or belong to the code which, although unwritten, yet cannot be broken without acknowledging disgrace. Continued the 38. Further, we provide plenty of means for the mind to refresh itself from business. We celebrate games and sacrifice all year around. And the elegance of our private establishments form a daily source of pleasure and help to distract us from what causes us distress. While the multitude of our city draws the produce of the world into our harbor, so that the fruit of other countries, other places, are as familiar a luxury as those of his own. If we turn to our military policy, there also we differ from our antagonists. We throw open our city to the world, and never by alien act exclude foreigners from any opportunity of learning or observing. Although the eyes of the enemy may occasionally profit by our liberality, trusting less in the system and policy than to the native spirit of our citizens. While in education, where our rivals from their very cradles, in other words, where our rivals from their very cradles, by a painful discipline, seeks a manliness. At Athens, we live exactly as we please, and yet are just as ready to encounter every legitimate danger. So, in other words, he emphasizes the Spartans' overless manliness and overless sacrificing everything for manliness. The Athenians are not any less brave than they are, and he says. In the proof of this, it may be noticed that the Spartans do not invade our country alone, but ring with them all their confederates, while the Athenians advance unsupported in the territory of a neighbor, and fighting upon foreign soil usually vanquish with ease men who are defending their homes. Our united force has never yet encountered by an enemy because we have at once to attend our marine and dispatch our citizens by land upon 100 different services, so that wherever they engage with some fresh such faction of our strength, a success against a detachment is magnified into a victory over the whole, over the nation, and a defeat and a reverse suffered at the hands of our entire people. Yet, yet if with habit, not of labor, but of ease, and courage, not of art, but of nature, we are still willing to encounter danger. We have the double advantage of not suffering hardships before we need to, and facing them in the hour of need as fiercely as those who never fear from them. Nor are these only points in which our city is worth admiration. We cultivate refinement without extravagance, knowledge without effeminacy. Wealth we employ more for the use than for show. The real disgrace, the real disgrace of poverty is owning to the fact to the fact, but in declining the struggle against it. Our public men have, besides politics, their private affairs to attend to. And our ordinary citizens, though occupied with the pursuit of industry, are still fair judges of public matters. For unlike in any other nation, we regard the citizens who take no part in the duties not as unambitious, but as useless. And we are able to judge proposals even if we cannot originate them. Instead of looking on discussions as a stumbling block in a way of action, we think it is the indispensable preliminary to any wise action at all. Again, in our enterprises, we present the singular spectacle of daring and deliberation, each carried to its highest point, and both united in the same persons. Although with the rest of mankind, decision is the fruit of ignorance, hesitation of reflection. But the prize for courage will surely be rewarded most justly to those who best know the difference between hardship and pleasure, and yet have never attempted to shrink from danger. In generosity, we are equally singular, acquiring our friends by conferring, not by receiving favors. Yet, of course, the doer of favors is the firmer friend of the two. And in order by continued kindness to keep recipient in debt, while the debtor feels keenly from the very conscientiousness that the return he makes will be a payment, not a free gift. If and sorry, so this is the fifth line, and it is only the Athenians who, fearless of consequences, confer their benefits not from calculation of expediency, but of confidence of liberality. So, in other words, he's saying that he makes the argument of Athens' liberality and generosity. Chapter 41. In short, I say that the city, I say that a city, we are the school of Hellenes. While I doubt if the world can produce a man who, were he has only himself to depend on, is equal to so many emergencies and graced by so many a versatility as the Athenians, and that this is no mere boast thrown out for the occasion, but the plain matter of fact is proven by the power of the city acquired by these habits. For Athens alone of her contemporaries is found when tested to be greater than her reputation, and alone gives no occasion to her assailants to blush at the antagonists by whom they have been worsened, or to her subjects to question her title to rule by merit. Rather, the admiration of the present and succeeding age will be ours, since we have not left our power without white witness, but have shown a mighty proofs, and far from needing a Homer for our elogists, or other of his craft, whose verses might charm for the moment only for the impression which they gave to melt at the touch of fact, which we force every sea and land to be the highways of our daring, and everywhere, where whether for evil or good, have left imperishable monuments behind us. Such is Athens, for which these men, in the assertion of their resolve not to lose her, nobly fought and died, and well may every one of their survivors be ready to suffer for her cause. Indeed, if I have dwelt at some lengths upon the character of our city, it has been our homeland, Patria. I'm not sure what the Greek here is. I should look at the Greek. It has been to show that our stake in the struggle is not the same as theirs, who have no such blessings to lose, and also that the eulogy of the men over whom I'm now speaking might be by definite proofs established, That eulogy is now a great measure complete. For the Athenians that I have celebrated is only what the heroism of these and their like have made her. Men whose fame, unlike that of most Hellenists, will be found to be no greater than what they deserve. If a test of worth be wanted, it is to be found in the closing scene. That this not only in the case in which it is the final seal upon their merit, but also but also in those in which gave the first intimation of their having any intimation, their first intimation of having any. For there is justice in the claim that steadfastness in his country's battle, in his homeland's battle, should be the cloak to cover man's other imperfections, since the good actions be blotted out by bad, and his merit as a citizen more than outweighs his demerits as an individual. But none of these allowed either wealth with his prospects of future employment to unnerve his spirit, or poverty with its hope of a day of freedom enriches the tempt and the shirk from danger. No, holding that vengeance upon their enemies was more to be desired than any personal blessing, and recognizing this to be the most glorious hazard, they joyfully determined they accepted the risk determined to accept the risk and make sure of their vengeance and let their wishes wait, and their committing to hope the uncertainty of final success in the business before them, before they thought fit to act boldly and trust in themselves, thus choosing to die resisting rather than to live submitting. They fled only from dishonor, but met danger face to face, and one after one brief moment, and while at the summit of their fortune, left behind them neither fear but their glory. So died these men as became Athenians. You, the survivors, must determine um, to have an altering, a resolution in the field, though you may pray that it may have a happy outcome, and not contend with ideas derived only from the words of advantages which are bound up in the defense of your country, your fatherland, your homeland. These would furnish a valuable text to a speaker even before an audience so alive to them as present. You must yourself realize the power of Athens, and feed your eyes upon her from day to day, till love of her fills your hearts. And when all her greatness shall break upon you, you must reflect that it was by courage, sense of duty, and a keen feeling of honor in action that men were established to win all this, and that no personal failure in an enterprise could make them consent to deprive their country of their valor. But they laid it at her feet at the most glorious contribution which they could offer. For this offering of their lives, made in common by them all, they each of them individually received that renown which never grows old, and a tomb not so much in which their bones have been deposited, but that noblest of shrines wherein their glory is laid up, to be eternally remembered upon every occasion upon which deed or story shall be commemorated. For heroes have the whole earth of their tomb. Heroes have the whole earth for their tomb, and in lands far from their own, where the column with the epitaph declared it, there's enshrined in every breast a written a breast a record unwritten with no monument to preserve it except that of the heart. These take as your models, and judging happiness to be the fruit of freedom and freedom of valor. Never decline the dangers of war. For it is not the miserable that would most justly be unsparing of their lives. These have nothing to hope for, but rather they who to whom continued life may bring reverses yet unknown, and who may fall, if it came, would be most tremendous in its consequences. And surely to a man of spirit, the degradation of cowardice must immeasurably be more must be immeasurably more grievous than the unfelt death which strikes him in the midst of his strength and uh, 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 you know patriotism. Use the word patriotism. I mean, zealousy or care for the city. And comfort, therefore, not condolence, is what I have to offer to the parents of the dead who may be here. Numberless are the chances at which they know the life of man is subject, but fortunate indeed are they who draw for their lot a death so glorious as which has caused your mourning, and to whom life has been so exactly measured as to terminate in happiness in which it has been passed. Still, I know that this is hard. This is a hard saying, especially to you when you will constantly be reminded of seeing in the homes others blessed, of which once you also enjoyed. And for grief is felt not so much for the want of what we have never known, but for the loss of that to which we have been long accustomed. Yet you, who are still of age to beget children, must bear up the hope of having others in their stead. Not only will they help you forget those whom you have lost, but will be to the city at once a reinforcement for and its security. For never can a fair or just policy be expected of citizens who who does not, like his fellow, bring a decision and interest and appreciation of a father. While those of you who have passed your prime must congratulate yourselves with the thoughts that the best part of your life was fortunate, and that the brief span what remains will be cheered by the fame of the departed. For it is only the love of honor that never grows old, and honor is not gain, as some would have it, that rejoices the heart of age and helplessness. Turning to the sons and brothers of the dead, I see an arduous struggle before you. When a man is gone, all are wont to praise him, and you should merit and and you and should you merit to be ever so transcendent, you will still find it difficult not merely to overtake, but even reproach their renown. The living have envy to contend with, while those who are no longer in our path are honored with a good will into which rivalry does not enter. On the other hand, if I must say anything on the subject of female excellence, to which you who are now to be in widowhood, it will be all compromised in this brief exhortation. Great will be your glory in not falling short of your national character, the character, and greatest will be her who is least talked about of men among the men, whether for good or for bad. um, my task is now finished. I performed it to the best of my ability, and in words at least. The requirement of the law is now satisfied. If deeds be in question, those who are here interred have received a part of their honor already. For the rest, their children will be brought up till manhood at the public expense. The city it thus offers a valuable prize as a garland of victory in this race of valor. For both for the reward of both these who have fallen and their survivors, and where the reward for merit are greatest, these are found the best citizens. And now that you have brought a close to your lamentations, your relatives, you may depart. Such was the funeral that took place during this winter, which in which the first year of the war came to an end. In the first days of summer, the Spartans and their allies, with 2/3 of their force, as before, invaded Attica, and under the command of okay, this is our second. I'm going to stop here. This is the second summer. So really the winter, he talks briefly of the events of the winter, and then talks about um, the funeral oration. I'm coming down to cough, so please forgive me. If you have any comments or suggestions, please. Oh no, I got a mark here. Oh no. Any comments, questions, or even suggestions or something you want me to answer or respond to, please put them below. If you liked it, like it. If you thought you wanted to share with a friend on social media and your things, you can subscribe if you want to see continue updates on this. You can follow me on social media down below. And if you want to help me continue doing these things and get better at it, you can help with Subscribe Star. Okay, we'll see what happens. I'm just getting used to this kind of thing. Again, I wish you have a nice day. Take care. Bye bye.